All right, back on the Young Turks today. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys. I'm in a good mood. Everything's going to be great. So you know what? It turns out it's Giving Tuesday. Did you know that? So a portion of the proceeds from Shop TYT are going to a committee to protect journalists, who I interviewed earlier today on the show. ShopTYT.com, 10% of the proceeds go there. How great is that? We're helping other people. Actually, you're helping other people and we're facilitating it. All right, anyways, did we get to our goal of 200,000 at tyt.com/go this month? Let's see it. Let's go to the thermometer, tyt.com/go. 4,175. As my son would say, so sad. No, I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. I don't think we made the 200,000. That was last month. This is the beginning of December, obviously, since this is the first day of December. Can I see 5,000? This is the last month. So I think we missed the last 3 months. Let's finish strong so we can be your strong boys. All right, guys, massive show. And Anna, when we do the Bill Barr story, I'm gonna need to use the soundboard at your first break. I'm just saying, Casper, go.
All right, so Attorney General William Barr, who is certainly known as being one of Donald Trump's biggest loyalists, has announced that the Justice Department, under his watch, has found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. This story broke today after Barr spoke to the Associated Press and gave this statement to reporters there. He said, quote, "To date, we have not found on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. We have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected the outcome of the election." So this is important because Cenk really wants to use a soundboard. So let's just do it.
Please up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Trump, down goes Trump, down goes Trump. One more time. Guys, this is like the 18th time we fired him, but this one is gonna stick, all right? This makes a giant difference. Because what you don't see behind the scenes is Bill Barr and Mitch McConnell have talked in the past. They had a meeting after the election where they decided to come up with a strategy. We told you about it here on the Young Turks, where they were basically, Bill Barr was saying, hey, we're gonna get the Justice Department to look into fraud. Now it was actually unprecedented. The local and state officials are supposed to handle that, not the Justice Department. We don't want the federal government interfering in those elections because the person running the federal government is one of the candidates. But he broke that rule, and at that point I said, they're basically seeing how this is gonna play out. And if it looks like Trump is winning, they'll say, oh yeah, Justice Department getting involved, oh, terrible fraud, etc. And if it looks like Trump is losing, they're gonna pull the chute. They just pulled the chute. That's Bill Barr, Mitch McConnell, and the Republican Party saying, it's over, OVAH, over, gone. Trump is out. So now I feel 1,000 times better. So now if he tries to say there's voter fraud, he's fighting his own Justice Department. And most importantly, Bill Barr does not make that move without consulting with the grand poobahs of the Republican Party. So my guess is, and this is now a guess based on political analysis and context, that he checked with McConnell again, and McConnell told him, cut him loose. So that's it, Trump's on his own now. Without his attorney general backing him up on nonsense, totally made up voter fraud charges, he's done. The rest is just nothing but tears upon tears, and I'm gonna very much enjoy those inconsolable crying by Donald Trump and his supporters.
So the inconsolable crying has already begun. Of course. Two of Trump's campaign lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, have already released a statement saying that they absolutely disagree with William Barr's assessment of the situation. They believe that they have information that William Barr is not privy to. And
sure, yeah, they do.
Yeah, William
the Kraken
Barr
and the fire hose and all that.
Yeah, William Barr, in addition to the intelligence community, which also helped investigate these allegations of widespread voter fraud, are somehow not privy to what Rudy Giuliani knows about. Okay, sure. Anyway, they did release a statement saying, with the greatest respect to the Attorney General, his opinion appears to be without any knowledge or investigation of the substantial irregularities and evidence, which by the way, there is no evidence, they haven't provided any evidence, of systemic fraud. And so one thing to also keep in mind is prior to Election Day, William Barr not only enabled a lot of Donald Trump's terrible behavior, he also enabled Donald Trump in spreading disinformation about the validity of mail-in ballots. He claimed that mail-in ballots would lead to widespread fraud. So he was certainly going along with that type of messaging. But understand that there is all these accusations lack evidence to the point where even William Barr is like, I don't know, homie, couldn't find the evidence. I don't know what to tell you. And Barr hasn't been hanging out in the White House often lately. He's kind of stayed away, but today he did visit the White House. He claims for a pre-scheduled meeting with the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. So we'll see how this plays out. But one thing I will say is it is pretty shameful that it's come to this, where William Barr, who's a loathsome human being, and who has certainly enabled Trump in 18 different ways, a million different ways, had the balls to come out and tell the truth about this whole election situation, whereas Republican members of Congress continue to run away from it. They either continue to enable him, or if they try to push back, they do it in the most craven, pathetic, feckless way. It says something about our congressional lawmakers, certainly GOP lawmakers in this case.
Yeah, I have a couple more things to add. First of which is na 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 na. Second of which is collecting MAGA tears for my too strong coffee. All right, we're rid of the guy. We're rid of the guy. Now the rest is nonsense. So look, I'm the only person on the left side, not the only person, but I'm among the few who thought, look, man, there's some percentage chance, and I had it at 10% at some point, 5% at another point. It's low, but it wasn't zero that they could pull off a clown coup. And the clown coup is, hey, the state legislators go, we don't care who won, we're putting forth different electors, etc. This Barr doing this basically says Mitch McConnell and the others said, no clown coup. We gave you a lot of rope, and we know what you did with it. But we're now at a crossing point. So why did they get to the tipping point? This last part is important. Now I'm into like really trying to mind read here. I'll be honest. The rest is factual, and then we gave you some context in terms of the McConnell-Barr relationship. Now this part is speculation. And I'm actually being kind to the Republicans here. I think that when DeGeneres started talking about executing the former Department of Homeland Security cybersecurity chief, that DeGeneres was one of Trump's lawyers. We're going to talk more about him later in the show. It got to a point where the Republican leadership made the calculation. Look, we were still winning up until this point in this madness and chaos. Why? One, we had a small percentage chance that we could actually take power, and so let's let it play out and see if we can do that. Two, we're delegitimizing this election as if we didn't lose. And that helps us with our propaganda, with our framing, with our branding, and we'll call Biden an illegitimate winner, and that'll help us defeat all of his proposals. But once you got to the violence, I mean, you got an evangelical preacher who was talking about executing people. Then you got Trump's own lawyer saying that the cybersecurity chief should be taken out at dawn and shot. Of course, now he claims, I was kind of maybe kidding, although I didn't say I was kidding at all. So once we got to that point, now McConnell and the rest, I believe, got to the conclusion where this is now hurting the Republican brand, which seemed not possible. I mean, they've done the most loathsome, horrible, horrific things, but since there's almost no one on the other side, they get to do all of that and frame it any way they like. So, but now it's a bridge too far, and you've got Republicans in absolute like rebellion in Georgia. They're furious, Republican officials in Georgia, saying you're definitely hurting our chances of holding the Senate. That's the most important part. And now, secondarily, now we got potential violence on the board. Not that they would care about the violence, but they would care about what it does to their own reputation. So, and now they're threatening violence against Republican officials. I mean, they're almost in hiding, the Republican officials in Georgia. So there's no question in my mind that the Republican Party made up its mind and told Bill Barr, that's it, we're done with the guy. He's now hurting us rather than helping us. We turn around, and now this is the beginning of a very, very long process, at the end of which they will claim they never supported him. And you think, no way, they're all 100% on board right now. But remember, they did the same thing to George W. Bush. Now if you ask Republicans, they're like, oh, I was against the Iraq war. They're, oh yeah, me too, we were all against the Iraq war. You all voted for it, you all lied for it. Now they're like, oh no, Iraq war, Democrats did that. So wait for it, and it'll be a much longer process here because Trump still has a Jedi mind lock on the zombies. And so McConnell and the rest are very wary of the zombies, i.e. almost all the Republican voters. So that's gonna be a super interesting battle. But for now, the country and the world breathes a sigh of relief as it appears the Republican Party has concluded the Trump era and cut him loose.
All right, well, let's move on to some other Biden cabinet picks that I think are worth discussing and doing a deep dive on. So Avril Haines is who we'll be focusing on today. President-elect Joe Biden has chosen Avril Haines to serve as the head of the National Security, or I should say National Intelligence, so the DNI. And while NPR has described her as a so-called hipster and outsider, in reality, she was the architect behind Barack Obama's disastrous drone program, which led to the murder, the deaths of civilians abroad. And of course, the Obama administration later referred to those civilians as collateral damage, which just further dehumanized them. But nonetheless, I do want to give you some more information about who Avril Haines is and how this is certainly a foreshadowing moment indicating that Biden plans to pursue very similar foreign policy that we experienced under the Obama administration. The choice of Haines, who would be the first woman to serve as the nation's top intelligence official, well, then that changes everything. I mean, if she's a woman, then it doesn't matter that she was the architect of the drone program. I mean, she's great. Prompted concern from some human rights groups, which questioned her role as the architect of the Obama administration's program targeting terrorists with drones, some of which, or many of which I should note, killed civilians. But her defenders argue that Haines helped put in place safeguards on the use of force and greater transparency for the drone program. She's also given a number of speeches, and I came across this one video from 2017 where she talked about something that really spoke to me. If you poll Americans and ask them, what do you think the government's priorities should be? It certainly isn't to engage in interventionist wars or to do offensive wars as the United States has been doing. It's to maybe focus on helping our fellow Americans out, especially since many of us are experiencing a devastating economic situation. What were her thoughts on that? Let's watch.
A survey done by the Pew Research Center recently said that a majority of Americans believe it would be better if the United States just dealt with its own problems and let other countries deal with their own challenges as best they can. Based on my years of working in the national security field for 2 different administrations over the last 15 years, I just don't think that's realistic. And even if it were possible, I'm convinced that disengaging would make us less safe as a country. We live in an increasingly complex and fast-paced world, one in which events that occur halfway around the globe and seem to have nothing to do with the United States can reach our shores in record time or impact us from abroad, creating economic and national security challenges for the United States. For example, an infectious disease can easily turn into a pandemic that finds its way to the United States. Or when a state fails, the strain that uncontrolled migration places on societies can create instability and conflict affecting our economy and giving rise to non-state actors such as terrorists or criminal networks that ultimately threaten our citizens.
So a few things that I'd like to just point out there and respond to, essentially. So she mentions the threat of disengaging and how that could lead to threats reaching our shores. We spend far more on our military than any country. And if any threat were to emerge, we have not only the military capability, but we have the intel necessary to protect ourselves. So protecting national security is one thing, But the policies that she championed as part of Obama's administration was very much part of offensive wars, very much a part of essentially doing signature strikes and drone strikes that led to deaths of civilians in the Middle East. That's led to more hostility toward the West in the United States because obviously, of course it would. If your family member died in a drone strike and then the US government later referred to your family members as collateral damage, that doesn't create a friendly international space, doesn't create friendly relationships or feelings toward the United States. And then finally, she talks about instability. If I recall, after Obama's actions in Libya, there's been quite a bit of instability in that country, and that instability continues. So spare me the nonsense about, oh no, I mean, this is what the majority of Americans want, but F them. I think it's much better to carry out the types of policies that I did under the Obama administration, which actually made our international relations far worse, which made the country less safe. It infuriates me that anyone is trying to give her a pass. And one more point, I know I'm filibustering right now, I don't mean to, but John Brennan, former CIA director, said this about Avril Haines, which I couldn't roll my eyes harder. It's clear that she has eclectic interests, even, bohemian.
Okay, so Anna, this is more important than just Avril Haines. This is a case study in what the establishment loves. She's perfect for them. Now, why? Number one, she's really smart. She really is. You see her history and you're like, wow, super smart. That's why part of the reason why they love Pete Buttigieg. He is really smart, that's no joke. And number two, she has a background that has the trappings of being liberal or progressive. Oh, she's so bohemian, man, and she has eclectic taste. Oh, they love that. Oh, that's so, because you want change on the outside, continuity on the inside. Identity politics, first woman who's a director of national intelligence, check, 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 she's perfect. Extrajudicial killings of civilians, check, wait, what happened there? Well, that's the thing that they actually want. They just want a smart, competent person with a fun background to do the extrajudicial killings and authorize it. So then it has all the trappings of a lovely person. Oh, did I forget to mention the other essential for the establishment? She's so nice. And again, I'm not joking. To people inside DC, she's apparently wonderful. Everybody that meets her are like, oh, she's so nice. Now, do you guys know what she did other than the drone strikes? She backed Gina Haspel for Trump's CIA director. Gina Haspel is the one that authorized a torture program and then burned the evidence. She's so nice to people inside DC. She's not as nice to the people that got killed at the business end of that drone strike, who, by the way, we didn't even know who they were. They're signature drone strikes. So that means we don't know who we're killing. We're bombing someone based on a cell phone or a computer or some other signal we think we have. And sometimes they're American civilians. And we don't even ask a judge or anything. That's why they're extrajudicial murders. And torture, yes, but she's so nice to people inside the club. Now, the other reason why this is a textbook establishment pick is because now here comes the other critical part of this equation, the media. Now, every once in a while, you'll hear me criticize NPR on the show. You'll think, I don't get it. They play such nice banjos and their whispers are so soothing. And they tell me sweet little things about how Bernie Sanders is terrible. The establishment is great. You should just go vote for moderate Democrats. It's so soothing, it's so great, but what's wrong with NPR? Well, here's the perfect example. Instead of talking about her drone strikes that, again, let me repeat, killed American civilians without a court order. There was no judgment at all. It is as anti-constitutional as you could imagine. I'm surprised Trump didn't jump through that door even more, just because he's an incompetent clown. He jumped through it plenty, right? And Obama opening the door is arguably worse, and she was the architect of it. Instead of focusing on that, I'm gonna read you now quotes from NPR's story. This starts right away. This is the second paragraph. For someone poised to become the ultimate insider as the director of national intelligence, Avril Haines spent her formative years more as a hipster and an outsider. So everybody, NPR is telling you, she's so cool. The way she does those murders, I didn't tell you about the murders, but she's so cool. But let's continue. Third paragraph. An only child raised on the west side of New York, she spent her teenage years helping care for her ailing mother, who died when Haynes was 15. As soon as she finished high school, Haynes set out on a series of adventures. It's like a kid's book, right? She began with a stint at an elite judo academy in Japan, earning a brown belt. Okay, she's so cool. She does judo. She has this touching story. She's a hipster. We're not done. Fourth paragraph. Her next stop was the University of Chicago, where she studied theoretical physics, a highly competitive department dominated by men. Boom, smart and identity politics. Yes, this is so soothing, NPR. Please tell me how we get to kill more civilians. Oh, you didn't mention that. You didn't mention that until way later as an afterthought near the end of the story. Oh, by the way, this wonderful hipster, Mother Teresa, also wants to kill people extrajudicially. Anyway, we're not done. Fifth paragraph. She also loved rebuilding cars and airplanes and eventually learned to fly. Mother Teresa plus Einstein. But there's a fun twist here. This usually happens. This is just a really hilarious side note. They then go to David Price, former CIA officer who's written extensively about the agency's leaders, and he has this quote. She bought a used Cessna and rebuilt the avionics herself and tried to fly across the Atlantic Ocean and crash landed near Newfoundland coast. There's nothing the establishment media loves more than establishment politicians who crash planes. John McCain.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, he crashed like 3 planes. They're like, yes, he's brilliant. Now look, I'm not like Donald Trump. I'm not saying I feel terrible for John McCain getting captured, but they celebrate like that McCain came in near the bottom of his class, crashed 3 planes. She, with a Cessna, she built a crane that crashed immediately in Canada. She was trying to cross the Atlantic. They're like, oh, she's so great. She's so great. I got one last one, Anna. But now 7th paragraph, NPR still creating this wonderful fairy tale about this person. The aborted trip wasn't a total disaster. Her co-pilot and flight instructor, David DeGee, later became her husband. And they launched an independent bookstore and cafe in a gritty part of Baltimore in the 1990s. She even helps African-American people in her gritty bookstore. Oh my God, she's so wonderful. She's so wonderful. She helped torture Gina Haspel get her job. Oh, what? This is why the mainstream media is ruining this country.
Absolutely. They focus on the cutesy little details about her personal life, don't care. They focus on her gender, don't care. Don't care that Biden has an all-women communications team. I don't care. What I care about is, okay, if you're gonna nominate women to serve in your cabinet, what do they represent? What is the message? What have they done in their careers? And what do they plan on doing as public servants for the American people? That's what I care about. Gender's great, we should have representation. But representation means nothing if the women that you put in charge are women who have enabled torture programs on behalf of the US government and orchestrated drone strikes that led to civilian deaths abroad. I'm not into it. I don't care if it's a woman, I don't care if it's a man, I don't care if it's an androgynous person, I don't care if it's a goat, I don't care if it's a boat. I don't care. What I care about is, are we gonna change the course of this country for the better? And based on what I'm seeing from Biden's cabinet picks, no, we're not. We gotta take a break. We'll be right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, You must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
All right, we're back.
All right, guys, let me jump in for a second, Anna. So now you guys know, now we started this yesterday. During the 4-minute breaks for all of our 24-hour channels, they're getting the commercials. But if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, and other places, we're actually gonna read the names of people who signed up on YouTube. It's really easy, hit the join button below. We're gonna read your comments, we're gonna do all that. But also now I've decided, it gives me time to tell you guys one other thing that I wanted to tell you about. Avril Haines. There's one issue with her, not for us. For us, there's a lot of issues. But the only thing that might have a tiny speed bump in her confirmation is she also led the CIA spying program on the Senate. So now the Senate has to vote for her. But since she's so terrible on everything else, they're like, I bet you they're like, she did spy on us. And that really upset us because that was about us and not our voters. Nobody cares about our voters, right? But since she spied on us, we're gonna ask a couple of tough questions before we confirm her. I'm just telling you ahead of time, that's what's gonna happen. All right, Casper, back to you.
All right, so you did Shop TYT already. Let's talk about Unlock the Vault. TYT is gonna have yet another special called Unlock the Vault. That'll be on December 8th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So the point of this is we're gonna unlock the vault of old videos and we're gonna react to them. It'll be lots of fun, and this is some more programming that we're offering up as part of our fundraising effort to help support that show and all the countless specials we've done this year. Please go to tyt.com/go. Also, some donor shout outs. What makes TYT different from other outlets is that we're powered by our viewers, our donors, our members. And so I wanna give some shout outs to our latest donors who have contributed to tyt.com/go. And that includes Larry from Washington, thank you for the $27. Susan from Illinois, $15. Edwin from Florida, $200. You get a press on shirt because of your generous donation, thank you. Darcy from Florida, thank you for the $50. And Clover from Ohio, thank you for the $27. We're incredibly appreciative.
All right, I got more comments for you guys. Super chat, FinFan33, you're back, brother, good to see you. TikTok, Bill Barr, yeah, I hear you on that. Lori Potty also asks, thanks for keeping me going. What do you think will happen to Barr? At this point, it doesn't matter if he fires Barr, it's over. So I don't think I'm being overconfident in saying that. Outrunning Errands says, thank you TYT, appreciate the content. Well, we appreciate your support. Now let me go to our members at tyt.com/join. First, they say Bucket Full of Dragons says, it's the first of the month. You know what that means. Save progressive journalism, save the country, America. Love it, tyt.com/go. Now, a couple of great comments on Haines. Meg writes in, Haines was killing people with drones before it was cool. Such a hipster. That's such a funny, unfortunately funny comment, Meg. I love our members, I love it. Okay, I can't keep up with mass inertia, writes in. This is too rich. The bookstore bit, talk about the white savior myth embodied via the whispers of NPR. You nailed it, that's exactly right. And that's exactly the story that they're playing for you. There's so many others that are wonderful, but I only have time for shout outs to folks who just joined. Arcuda 2001, Lauren Tamura just joined by hitting the join button on YouTube. And member upgrades are Aries, Brianne Kane, Lisa Ann McBride. You guys are amazing. Coming right back to the program now. right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian. Lots of news. Casper, go.
All right, well, Senator Joe Manchin is essentially trying to swing his Johnson around as some sort of tough guy who's going to stand in the way of Congress getting anything substantive done during Biden's administration. In reality, he's just another corrupt politician who's looking to appease his donors and basically repackage it as being a principled politician who wants to avoid the polar opposites of the parties. Now, he's been feuding with progressives like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It started about a week ago where he started attacking progressives within the Democratic Party who have pushed for progressive policy proposals, who have aligned themselves with Black Lives Matter. And so he had written, defund the police, defund my butt, because he's a child. I'm a proud West Virginia Democrat. We are the party of working men and women. We want to protect Americans' jobs and healthcare, except he never does. We do have some crazy socialist. We don't have some crazy socialist agenda. We do not believe in defunding the police. And so AOC tweeted that image of her giving him the death stare. And in response to that, he later cried about it to the New York Times saying, I guess she put the dagger stare on me. I don't know the young lady, I really don't. I never met her. I'm understanding she's not that active with her bills or in committee. She's more active on Twitter than anything else. Okay. So I absolutely disagree with that. But nonetheless, I'm going to move on to a recent interview that he had with the New York Times because he's continuing this messaging of how he's really going to stand up to the party. Even if the two Senate runoff races in Georgia lead to Democratic wins, he will be the cop that stops any type of policy that Republicans might dislike. He doesn't say it in so many words, but that is essentially what he's implying. So he says in regard to what he plans to do for his corporate donors, he doesn't say it that way, but that's what this is about. The most conservative member of his party in the Senate, as the most conservative member of the party in the Senate, he has a message for fellow Democrats hoping to capture the majority and quickly begin muscling through legislation to bring about sweeping liberal change. Not on his watch. Great, okay, so that's wonderful. He also pretends to be absolutely delusional enough to think that the Democratic Party has been taken over by Marxists. He says, I just would hope that people would start looking at the person that they're voting for and not the party they belong to. A Democrat who's a moderate conservative like myself is much needed to bring other people to that moderate position. And let's just talk about why he's so quote unquote moderate. You look at his top donors, and this is from 2015 to 2020. The top industries that have donated money to Joe Manchin include the real estate industry. You have Goldman Sachs as one of his top donors, specific donors, but you have the securities and investment industry essentially serving as his absolute top donor. And it's just unsurprising to me that he's going to go along with what his donors want. But of course, he's got to do positive PR for himself. He's got to repackage it as something better because people aren't going to like that he's a corrupt politician. So instead, he's branding himself as this reasonable politician who's going to prevent the floodgates of progressivism from opening in this country.
Yeah, so Manchin and the media are in hog heaven because the corporate media loves bipartisanship because it leads to protecting the status quo, keeping the powerful in their current positions, changing almost nothing, more tax cuts for the wealthy. So that's why the mainstream media has what they call a centrist bias. It's not actually the center of the country, it's the center of Washington, which is the center of power. So Manchin serves that power, and so does the media. So they're beside themselves with joy. Now, none of the articles, by the way, corrected him. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is incredibly active in committee. She's so active in committee that a lot of the moderate or centrist or corporate Democrats complain about it all the time. Like, oh my God, she's supposed to be a backbencher. She's her first term. What's she doing? Why is she so active? Why does she speak out so much? And she does an amazing job. So it's totally not true. Then he says, and this is really interesting. He says, well, she hasn't produced much in the form of bills. Well, there he's a little bit right because she made a mistake. She made the mistake of listening to corporate Democrats like Manchin and Nancy Pelosi. They told her, don't try to introduce Green New Deal, don't try to introduce Medicare for all. And out of respect, she listened to them, and now they're using it against her. Never ever agree with corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. They'll only use it against you later. Now, if they actually agree with you on policy, great, I'm happy to have that, right? But if you go in their direction, it's a trap. So now, Manchin, from his perspective, now get ready to get mad at me for a second, is doing something that's perfectly rational. That's it, you support Manchin and Neera Tanden. Okay, no, hear me out.
You better communicate this clearly, homeboy, okay?
So from his perspective, the system is what it is. How are you gonna win if you don't have tons of donor money? You knucklehead progressives don't get it. I have to serve Goldman Sachs. I have to serve coal and fossil fuel companies because otherwise I'm less likely to win. In this current system, there is truth to that. Now, we're in the middle of changing it. That's why now there's 10 Justice Democrats in Congress, et cetera. So I'm gonna get to the giant problem with this line of thinking in a second, but he's thinking that. That's why he actually came on this program. We had an interview and I showed him that.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
His top donor was a fossil fuel company, and he seemed to be, and then he helped to pass an amendment that would cover up their toxic sludge. And he said, Cenk, I don't even know that they're my top donor. He said that on the Young Turks. He doesn't know who his top donor is. Now that's hilarious. That's of course not true. Every politician is perfectly aware of almost all of their donors, let alone their top donor. So he says, well, from my perspective, I gotta do it. I gotta serve the corrupt to get the money to win. And in West Virginia, I gotta be conservative. I gotta be for guns and the Bible, et cetera. Now, half of that is true. In West Virginia is not New York, California, Hawaii, or Rhode Island. Yes, I understand why you'd have to have a more pro-gun rights position in West Virginia. We're practical, we understand that. We might not like it, but we understand it. On the corruption, he's both right, because that is the current system, and totally wrong. See, the right way to approach that is, and here's what I'm going to do to change it. I gotta do this for now, but I'm then going to do X, Y, and Z to make sure we get to a non-corrupt system. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he swims in the corruption. And he celebrates it. He's like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. This is the moderate position is Goldman Sachs is awesome. The moderate position is that West Virginians love big bankers. Really, really? And of course, the mainstream media is complicit with Manchin, so no one ever asks him, well, you have enormously pro-banker positions. Really, is that what the voters of West Virginia, who are the most populous in the whole country, are pro-Goldman Sachs? No, of course not. What they're all winking but never telling their audience or their readers is, hey, you know what? Goldman Sachs owns Joe Manchin, and so do all of his donors. And the people of West Virginia do not want that. And by the way, we're gonna do great damage to the Democratic brand, because we're gonna tell every other Democrat, don't call out Joe Manchin for being owned by Goldman Sachs, because that would be against your colleague. But golly gee, you caught a tough break here. That means you also can't call out any Republican. So, because if you say the Republicans are taking money from Goldman Sachs, that means you also got to call out Manchin for taking money from Goldman Sachs, and we can't do that. We have to protect Manchin at all costs. So now the corruption is solidified and here to stay forever. That's the game that's being played. So I, as always, I like to think, have a constructive solution. Joe Manchin is going around and the media is celebrating. I'm the one vote that could side with the Republicans and block anything in the Senate, even if the Democrats win the 2 Georgia seats. I'm the most important person. And the media is like, bravo, Manchin, you are the most important person. Okay, here's a proposal. Bernie Sanders can also block any bill. It only takes one Democratic senator to block a bill.
It's true.
Oh, nobody ever thought of that, huh? That's weird. Now, if Bernie Sanders blocks the bill, though, all of mainstream media will come out, this guy, terrible guy, blocking the bill that they need. When Manchin does it, they're like, bravo, bipartisanship. That way nothing got done until you agreed with the Republicans. Great job, Joe Manchin. Bernie Sanders blocks the bill. These progressives, they're not practical. They're not practical. You have to give Mitch McConnell everything he wants, otherwise you're not being practical. So I say to Bernie Sanders and every other progressive in Congress, block the goddamn bills. Block the bills. This is called politics. If Manchin says, I'm gonna play politics, I'm gonna take all the corrupt money and I'm gonna do their bidding, why don't you play politics and go, I'm not gonna let you. And I don't give a goddamn that you call yourself my colleague. No corrupt guy who works for Goldman Sachs is my colleague that I have to defer to because he'd like to make a deal with Mitch McConnell that's gonna rob the rest of us blind. No deal. Vote no on every terrible bill, which will be almost all of them.
All right, let's take our second break of the hour. And when we come back, we'll have more stories for you that you don't want to miss, including Donald Trump's feud with Republican governors in both Arizona and Georgia. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, we're back. I've got a fun, eclectic mix of rage and amusement and good times today for you guys. I'm in a good mood, but that's not stopping me from raging against Haynes and Manchin. And I'm now beginning to love these breaks. So I got more comments for you guys, but first, Anna, I think you've got more, don't you?
No, not really, I don't.
Okay, then I'll read comments right off the bat here. Oh, I've got some from Twitch. Duran Zim A52 says, first of all, subbed for 4 months with Prime. Remember, everybody on Twitch, Amazon Prime, if you have it, it's free for you to sub to us. And by the way, to continue subbing to us, but we get the revenue, so it's a wonderful win-win. Anyway, they wrote, hey, Cenk and Anna, I just want to thank you for being my rock since I was 16, way back in 2008. Isn't that amazing? I mean, we've grown up with you guys. I love you guys. Anyway, he says, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a he or she. I've been an activist subscriber on the main website since 2015, and you guys have kept me sane through that primary, this awful administration. Love you guys. Right back at you. Trash E Plays wrote in, down goes Trump. He couldn't meet the bar. Is that a pun a hero might make? I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. Trashy plays, come on, man. You're getting at my heartstrings. That's the kind of pun I love. So now more subs on Twitch. Brother Mucker, which is already an awesome handle. 5 gifted subs. An awesome action from an awesome handle. Miss Courtney, 4 months at tier 1. Exelon OG, 5 months at Prime. Blanco FTP, 4 months tier 1. Brandy Lou, 2 months tier 1. And 3 gifted subs. The Art of Gaming TV, and there is an art to it. 5 months at tier 1 and Global Astro, 3 months at tier 1. One of these days I'm gonna figure out what the tier 1 versus tier 3 is. Anyways, back to Super Chat on YouTube. Nader disagrees with us a little bit, Nader A, not Nader R. So much complaining about every cabinet pick. We have to be realistic. There's no way to please everyone. Trump lost, we can enjoy that for now. Eviction happening 1/2021 on January 20th. Biden will have a lot of Trump failures to fix.
Yeah, so Nader, let me respond to that.
Go.
So listen, we're not asking for Che Guevara, okay? We're not asking for some insane, crazy communist to take. All I personally, I can only speak for myself. How about let's not bring back people who were the architects of drone strikes that killed civilians, children, literally killed children in the Middle East. How about, that's not too much to ask, right? How about let's not bring in Neera Tanden, who takes in foreign money through her BS think tank and then pushes for harmful policies, including supporting anything and everything Benjamin Netanyahu does, including his viciousness toward Palestinians. I just, look, if you guys were worried about how this country or where this country was headed under the Trump administration, understand that Biden is setting the stage for someone far worse than Trump after his first term is up. These are disastrous people. I'm not complaining because I'm finding little things to nitpick about. These are big issues.
Yeah.
Killing civilians is a big issue.
Look, we said Janet Yellen was a mixed bag. She was the head of the Federal Reserve, but we'll take it. So we don't have unreasonable standards. Dave of the Triffids made a great comment. We don't have time for it. We'll do it in the next break. Okay, but guys, our job is to tell you what the reality is. And the reality is Avril Haines does have that problem. All right, back in the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna, take it away.
All right, well, as we know, Donald Trump's campaign lawyers are absolutely unhinged, but Joe DeGeneva, who's one of those lawyers, took things a little further when he advocated for essentially executing people who essentially tell the American people the truth about this election and how there was not widespread voter fraud. So in this next video, he specifically talks about former cybersecurity official Christopher Krebs. Let's hear what he had to say.
Anybody who thinks that this election went well, like that idiot Krebs, who used to be the head of cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah, the guy that was on 60 Minutes last night.
That guy is a Class A moron. He should be drawn and quartered, taken out at dawn and shot.
So that happened. He said that openly during a radio show interview. And then later, Christopher Krebs did respond to these threats. And so let's take a listen to what he had to say.
How concerned are you about comments like that?
You know, it's certainly more dangerous language, more dangerous behavior. And the way I look at it is that we're a nation of laws. And I plan to take advantage of those laws. I've got an exceptional team of lawyers that win in court, and I think they're probably going to be busy.
You feel like there's legal action that might arise from comments like that?
We're taking a look at all our available opportunities. I'm not going to give them the benefit of knowing how I'm reacting to this. They can know that there are things coming, though.
So it seems as though DeGeneva took note of the legal action that Christopher Krebs is planning on taking, and he immediately backpedaled the exact way that you would think someone associated with Trump or Trump himself would backpedal. He said this: for anyone listening, it was obvious my remarks were sarcastic and made in jest. I, of course, wish Mr. Krebs no harm. This was hyperbole in a political discourse.
Wait. Was it joking or was it hyperbole? Because those are slightly different things.
He was being serious. We all know that.
But you guys saw the tape. If you want, you're all on platforms where you can rewind. You can listen to it again. And there was no clarification afterwards. So sometimes when I make an analogy, I will tell you, look, guys, it's just political. It's not physical, right? He didn't do anything along those lines. He didn't laugh. Howie Carr didn't laugh. No one laughed. And no one clarified. And no one said it was just an analogy or a metaphor. They just said, oh yeah, take him out at dawn and shoot him. And then they moved on. And he was never challenged on that because the right-wing leadership have all lost their minds. So, I mean, if somebody on this show said, hey, I think that we should start taking out people and shooting them in the streets, I would object. I would say, no, that's a terrible idea, right? To them, it's not even noteworthy. Oh yeah, let's shoot people, let's execute people. Wiles, this other evangelical pastor, started talking about how cowboys and mountain men need to go and start rounding people up. He said, that Trump is now trying to bring back the firing squad, which is true, by the way. And he said it's to execute the politicians, scientists, and professors who are working with communist China to help Joe Biden defeat Trump. We need to execute them. So now this is just being said all over the place with no consequence. Now this actually, I'm surprised he mentioned his lawyers because that's civil, right? No, this is a criminal issue. You can't threaten someone's life like that on air. And he was, Wiles at least just said generically, I'd like to kill scientists and professors and Democrats. DeGenoa named the person. That's definitely a crime. You can't threaten to murder someone on air. That's crazy. And so I don't know, are we a country of laws? Is there gonna be any action against DeGenoa? Or are we all just used to like, oh yeah, Republicans starting to murder people, it's not a big deal. We just move on with our lives. No, we don't move on. No, if you move on, what's gonna happen is somebody's gonna take him up on it. And that's what we're all really, really worried about. So we've got to get back to actually having rule of law and not just, hey, if Trump or his cronies do it, it's not illegal by definition because they're the dictators. And then let's arrest all of our political opponents who actually didn't do anything. That's not rule of law. That's just tyranny. And that's a tyranny we've been living under for 4 years. And now they've just reached a tipping point here. And I think that's part of the reason, and I'm probably being too generous here, but Bill Barr and some of the Republican leadership decided today that no, Trump, you're done, man. There was no voter fraud. There's no evidence of it. You're done. But either way, this specific issue has to be addressed. This is not a random person. It's one of Trump's lawyers threatening to execute someone. There's no end to how insane that is.
And we already know that we've had situations of right-wing gang members showing up to protests, for instance, and carrying out shootings, murdering people, and then you have the right wing essentially apologizing for them, not apologizing for them, but making excuses for that type of criminal behavior. And there, of course, other former Trump administration, federal employees who have decided to step out of that world and actually serve as whistleblowers because the Trump administration has been so disastrous when it comes to certain, constitutional rights, human rights. We've all talked about this stuff quite a bit. And so Miles Taylor was one of those people, right? He was the one who wrote the anonymous op-ed in the New York Times about Donald Trump. He later decided to leave the administration and serve as a whistleblower. And he himself has said that he's needed to move at least 10 different times in order to protect his own life because the Trump sycophants are going after him so aggressively and threatening his life. And I believe him because we've seen the type of actions Trump supporters take. So the reason why I'm giving you that context, and I went on that tangent, is because words matter, and DeGenova's words certainly matter when A, he wasn't joking, he was absolutely being serious. No one was joking around, no one was laughing. And people are gonna hear that and think, oh, well, this is a lawyer who's greenlighting something that people should do against a political opponent.
Yeah, so today, Georgia's voting systems manager, Gabriel Sterling, came out and said, this has to stop. Now, almost every major elected Republican official in Georgia are receiving death threats. And yes, you heard that right, Republican elected officials are, because Trump and all of his cronies are yelling at the top of their lungs, they cheated, they worked with Hugo Chavez and Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. So it's Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, and Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, and all of them, they cheated. So they're all getting death threats now. It's hey, death threats, not just for Democrats anymore. So now that it's affecting Republicans, finally people are beginning to notice and maybe the beginning of taking action. But the right-wing militia in this country is totally out of control and totally egged on by this clown, crazy, literally crazy president that we have, still screaming that he won and that Biden cheated with the Venezuelans and the Chinese. Totally nuts. By the way, one last thing, and this is a rando thing, I get it, right? It's anecdotal. But on social media, I put a comment about how DeGenoa threatened to murder this guy. And And some right winger, and this is just summarizing. A lot of the right wingers are like, yeah, so what? So what? So what? And this one guy's like, oh, you guys do looting and rioting anyway. We're just better at the violence.
Wow.
So it's gotten so bad, they think it's perfectly normal to say we're better at violence and we're gonna start doing it. So if they don't put an end to it right now by taking actual legal action and get the authorities to actually do their job and protect people in this country, Democrats and Republicans, it's gonna spin completely out of control.
Well, let's move on to Trump now warring or feuding with Republican governors, because that's definitely taking place and the madness is just not ending. So Donald Trump is now suggesting that the Senate runoff races in the state of Georgia essentially do not happen, do not continue, because of the fact that he wants to continue pushing this message of unfounded, unproven widespread voter fraud. So on Twitter, he wrote, "Do something, Brian Kemp," who of course is the governor of Georgia. "You allowed your state to be scammed. We must check signatures and count signed envelopes against ballots. Then call off election. It won't be needed. We will all win." So he's, implying that the election should be called off. Now, if you guys can remember, there's been this internal battle between Trump and, I guess, average Republican / Trump loyalists who are worried that Trump's message of widespread voter fraud is discouraging voters, Republican voters in Georgia, from voting for the Republican candidates in these Senate runoff races. And so I think that this is a way of Trump having his cake and eating it too. Like just do away with this election. Like we don't have to worry about it. That way I can keep pushing this nonsense claim that there was widespread voter fraud, which by the way, I'm raising a ton of money off of. In fact, a report just came out indicating that the Trump campaign has raised $150 million to fight their legal battles regarding voter fraud, but that money doesn't actually go to these court battles. As you guys know, many of these court battles have been dropped. 38 total court battles have either been withdrawn or they've completely lost in them. So they just want to keep grifting off of this message, and they don't care if they're going to have to hurt the Republican candidates in these runoff races in order to do it. It's insane.
Yeah, look, in a sense, I feel bad for the folks that Donald Trump is robbing.
Wrong.
No, and of course the other side of the coin is, I mean, a sad day for you. You fell for a con man, and we try to help you. We try to tell you, hey, listen, he's not just bad for us. You knuckleheads, he's bad for you. You're never gonna hear it, I know. Oh yeah, you're trying to trick me, man. I think people who are robbing me and then keeping it for themselves, that they're looking out for me. I'm trying to help you, brother, but if you don't want the help, there's nothing I could do about it. So, and they're so vicious towards everyone else that it's hard not to enjoy them being robbed. I'm gonna keep it real. There's a little schadenfreude there, like, oh, did Trump take all your money? And then he didn't use it for the legal fights? He used it for his own debts? That's a tough break you caught. But it doesn't matter because they're not gonna believe it. I mean, yeah. I will give Trump this credit. He is a better con man than I realized. I thought he was a simpleton, and I think his cons are so easy to be able to tell. But no, people really can't tell, and they never catch on. And so he's such an effective con man that at this point, if every person in the world said, "Hey, Donald Trump just stole your money, came into your house and stole your money," and you see the money's gone, MAGA will still be like, "No, he didn't." No. Well, then I can't help you because you've actively chosen to deny reality. So it is what it is. Sad day for you.
So he just keeps feuding with both Brian Kemp, again, Republican governor of Georgia, because he was unwilling to essentially steal the election on behalf of Donald Trump. And he's also feuding with the governor of Arizona because Governor Ducey of Arizona also decided to do the right thing and certify the state's election results, which further confirmed that Joe Biden has won the state of Arizona. And so the feud is so ridiculous. I'll give you an example of what Trump had to say about Brian Kemp during an interview with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend.
Everything has to be approved by the legislature. And they had judges making deals, and they had electoral officials making deals, like this character in Georgia who's a disaster. And the governor's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. I'm ashamed that I endorsed him. But I look at what's going on. It's so terrible.
So, yeah, go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so first of all, now he's in open warfare with the Republican governor of Georgia that he endorsed. And at this point, the Georgia Republican officials are like, enough. And they're all saying like, no, now we got death threats against us because of this guy, and we've got to put an end to it. And he's actively trying to fight against it. But remember the first tweet that Anna read, you guys? He's saying, well, Kemp, what's your demand of Kemp? He's like, well, why doesn't he just invalidate the election and say we won? That's not a thing. He doesn't have the power to do that. That's not within American laws at all. He doesn't even know what the hell he's asking for. He's both a clown and a tyrant. And then the great irony is, all the MAGA guys are like, oh, I got guns because I'm ready to fight tyrants. They're like, oh, tyrant's here. Oh, great. Come on, be our leader.
Yeah, it's insane. I really don't want to rush through the Ducey thing because we're not going to do it justice. We don't have enough time, so we'll pick it up in the post game and actually do the story justice. So become a member, tyt.com/join to become one. The post game is actually going to air after Old School today. So after the main show, we're going to go to Old School, and then after Old School, we'll go to the post game. We'll pick up this story and do many other stories that you guys are going to love.
Yeah. So for folks that are watching on YouTube, so easy. You hit the join button below. That way, you'll get all of Old School, any of the Old Schools you want, plus the post game, especially at the essentials level. Everybody else, tyt.com/join. We'll see. But everybody, stay here right now for Old School. It starts for everyone live in just a couple of minutes. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.